The Dharmadharmatāvibhāga of Maitreya, the distinction between phenomena and the nature of phenomena. I pay homage to youthful Manjushri. Since something is to be relinquished after being understood, and something else is to be made fully perceptible, therefore this treatise was composed out of the wish to distinguish these two through their defining characteristics. All this is summarized into two, that is, into phenomena and the nature of phenomena. What is characterized by phenomena is samsara. What is characterized by the nature of phenomena is the nirvana of the three yanas. What appears as duality and how it is designated is false imagination, which is the defining characteristic of phenomena. The appearance of what does not exist is false. Being without reference in all respects, imagination is mere conception. The defining characteristic of the nature of phenomena is suchness, which lacks any distinction between apprehender and apprehended, or between objects of designation and what designates them. The mistakenness due to what does not exist appearing is the cause of afflictiveness, just like seeing illusory elephants and so on, and also because what exists is not seen either. If any one of these two, non-existence and appearance, did not exist, mistakenness, unmistakenness, afflicted phenomena, and purified phenomena would not follow. These two are neither one nor different because there is a difference as well as no difference in terms of existence and non-existence. The realization of phenomena through 6 points is unsurpassable, comprehending the defining characteristic, the rationale, there being neither one nor different, their matrix, what is in common and not in common, and the non-existence of the appearance of apprehender and apprehended. The defining characteristic, the rationale, and not being one or different are as in the brief introduction above. Their matrix consists of what cycles in what, the world of sentient beings and the container. The world of the container consists of the cognizances that seem to be in common. The world of sentient beings consists of what is in common and what is not in common. Birth, behavior, care, defeat, qualities, and faults cause each other and therefore are in common, by virtue of mutual domination. The abode, cognizance, karma, happiness, suffering, death, and transition, birth, bondage, and liberation are not in common by virtue of not being in common. What appears as something apprehended that is in common and external is the cognizance that is the apprehender. But there is no referent that is apart from cognition because such is common. The apprehended objects, the referents that are consciousness, that are not in common and are the minds and so on of others, do not mutually serve as objects for the two types of cognizances that are the apprehenders, while being or not being in meditative equipoise, respectively. Because for those who are not in meditative equipoise, their own conceptions appear, and because for those who are in meditative equipoise, it is a reflection of the mind of another that appears in the form of the experiential object of samadhi. If what appears as the apprehended does not exist, it is established that what appears as the apprehender does not exist either. Therefore, the realization of the non-existence of the appearance of apprehender and apprehended is established. For arising without beginning is established. For while the two are not established at all, they are commonly known. The realization of the nature of phenomena through 6 aspects is unsurpassable. The realization of the defining characteristic, the matrix, penetration, contact, recollection, and the arrival at its nature. The defining characteristic is as in the brief introduction. The matrix consists of all phenomena and the collection of the words of all sutra collections that represent the 12 branches of the Buddha's speech. Penetration is the entire path of preparation that consists of the proper mental engagement which relies on the sutra collection of the Mahayana. Contact is the realization and experience of suchness through the path of seeing because the correct view is attained, which is by virtue of direct training. Recollection is the entire path of familiarization that eliminates the stains of what consists of the factors concordant with enlightenment just as one has made contact with it. As for the arrival at its nature, by virtue of suchness having become without stains, in all respects, nothing but suchness appears, which is the perfection of the fundamental change. The realization of the fundamental change through 10 points is unsurpassable, realizing the nature, the entity, the persons, the distinctions, the prerequisites, the foundation, the mental engagement, the trainings, the shortcomings, and the benefits. As for realizing the nature, in stainless suchness, adventitious afflictions and suchness do not appear and appear, respectively. The realization of the entity refers to the change of the cognizance that is the common container into suchness, the change of the Dharma dhatu of the sutra collection into suchness, and the change of the cognizance that is the dhatu of sentient beings, which is not in common, into suchness. As for realizing the persons, the first two are the changes into suchness that are those of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The latter one refers also to those of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. The realization of the distinctive features refers to the distinctive feature of the pure realms of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and the distinctive feature of having attained the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogika-kaya, and the Nirmanika-kaya, which is due to the distinction of having obtained seeing, instruction, and mastery, respectively. The realization of the prerequisites is by virtue of the distinctive feature of previous aspiration prayers, the distinctive feature of the focal object that is the Mahayana teaching, and the distinctive feature of training on the 10 bhumis. The realization of the focal objects through 4 points is by virtue of the Mahayana teaching, aspiring for it, being certain about it, and the completion of the accumulations. The realization of the relinquishment of characteristics through 4 points is by virtue of relinquishing the characteristics of antagonistic factors, remedial factors, suchness, and the dharmas of realization. Through this, corresponding to this enumeration, it is taught as the relinquishment of the characteristics that are coarse, middling, subtle, and associated for a long time. The realization of the correct yogic practice, also in 4 points, is by virtue of the yogic practice of observation, the yogic practice of non-observation, the yogic practice of the non-observation of observation, and the yogic practice of the observation of non-observation. The realization of the defining characteristics in 3 points is by virtue of abiding in the nature of phenomena due to abiding in the nature of phenomena that is non-dual and inexpressible. It is also by virtue of non-appearance because what appear as duality, how it is designated, sense faculties, objects, cognizance, or the world as the container do not exist. Through these, the defining characteristic is clearly taught, as it is described in the sutras. Non-conceptual wisdom is ungraspable, indemonstrable, ungrounded, without appearance, without cognizance, and without base. It is also by virtue of appearance because all phenomena are seen like the center of space, and because all conditioned phenomena are seen like illusions, and so on. The realization of the benefit in 4 points is by virtue of attaining the Dharmakaya in a complete manner, by virtue of attaining the supreme state of bliss, by virtue of attaining mastery over seeing, and by virtue of attaining mastery over instruction. The realization by virtue of thorough knowledge in 4 points consists of the thorough knowledge of being a remedy, the thorough knowledge of the defining characteristic, the thorough knowledge of the distinctive features, and the thorough knowledge of the functions. Here the thorough knowledge of being a remedy refers to non-conceptual wisdom. That is, its being a remedy for clinging to these 5, phenomena, persons, change, difference, and denial, in terms of their having a real nature. The thorough knowledge of the defining characteristic refers to its specific characteristic that is the exclusion of these 5, lacking mental engagement, transcendence, complete subsiding, what is naturally non-conceptual, and picturing. The thorough knowledge of the distinctive features is by virtue of the distinctive features of the 5 factors of being non-conceptual, not being partial, non-abiding, lasting, and being unsurpassable. The thorough knowledge of the functions refers to the distinctive features of function that are 5-fold: distancing conceptions, granting unsurpassable bliss, uniting with the freedom from afflictive and cognitive obscurations, engaging in all aspects of knowable objects through the wisdom that is attained subsequent to it, and purifying Buddha realms, maturing sentient beings, and bestowing the knowledge of all aspects. As for the realization of mental engagement, as it is said, bodhisattvas who wish to realize non-conceptual wisdom engage mentally as follows. Due to being ignorant about suchness since beginningless time, false imagination consists of what contains all seeds, the cause for what is not real appearing as duality, and also what is based on it, yet different. Here what entails cause and result appears, but it is not real. By virtue of appearing in such a way, the nature of that does not appear. By virtue of that not appearing, the nature of phenomena does appear. When bodhisattvas mentally engage in this in a proper manner, they realize non-conceptual wisdom. By virtue of such observing, they realize focusing on mere cognizance. By virtue of focusing on mere cognizance, they realize that all reference are non-observable. By virtue of all reference being non-observable, they realize that mere cognizance is not observed either. By virtue of not observing that cognizance, they realize that a difference between those two is not observable. Those two not being observable as such is non-conceptual wisdom. It lacks an object and lacks observation because it is characterized by not observing any characteristics. The realization of the training is fourfold by virtue of the training through aspiration on the level of engagement through aspiration. This is the phase of discernment. By virtue of the training in discriminating awareness on the first bhumi, this is the phase of contact. By virtue of the training in familiarization on the 6 impure bhumis and also on the 3 pure ones, this is the phase of recollection. And by virtue of the training in completion on the Buddha bhumi, because the deeds of a Buddha are effortless and uninterrupted. This is the phase of the arrival at the nature of phenomena. As for realizing the shortcomings, they occur if there is no fundamental change. The shortcomings are fourfold. The shortcoming of there being no support for the afflictions not operating, the shortcoming of there being no support for engaging in the path, the shortcoming of there being no support for presenting conventional terms for persons having passed into nirvana, and the shortcoming of there being no support for presenting conventional terms for the differences between the 3 types of enlightenment. Based on the opposites of those, the existence of the fundamental change should be known as entailing a fourfold benefit. One should understand that these are the 10 points of how to realize the fundamental change. That non-existent phenomena appear corresponds to, for example, illusions, dreams, and so on. Examples for the fundamental change are that it corresponds to space, gold, water, and so on. This concludes the distinction between phenomena and the nature of phenomena, composed by Noble Maitreya. It was translated, edited, and finalized by the Indian abbot Pandita Shantibhadra and the great editor-translator and fully ordained monk Tsultrim Jalwa. It was corrected and finalized by the Kashmirian junior abbot Pandita Parahita and the great editor-translator and fully ordained monk Gador at the practice place that is the Temple of Toling. Mangalam.